Welcome, everyone, to part 2 of our AI Insights series here at Domo, implementing AI safely and effectively in your organization, which means I get to bring some really exciting guests. But before we get to formal introductions, let me talk a little bit about what this session will hopefully provide a solution for you. We want to outline kind of a strategic approach to implementing generative AI safely and efficiently within your organizations. That's what this session is about, and that is what we're going to be diving into today. This is going to really be about I'm getting definitely tongue twisted this morning. Foundational strategies. Jason laughs at me. He's seen enough of me on camera that he knows that sometimes that can happen. We just want to make sure that you guys are using AI responsively and obviously as part of your regular communication and training. We know that AI can be a scary place, which is why we're trying to take the lead here at Domo, bringing on these great examples to chat about some of the great things you can do with AI, but making sure you're doing it safely and effectively, right? Let's get on to those introductions so I can get out of the way and stop making a brief fool of myself as we begin this introduction. Karl Altern from Domo, our principal program manager over data governance, and our special guest here at RXA at One Magnified, Jason Altenberg, the senior manager of BI there. Jason, obviously we're very familiar with each other. Jason is in our community, one of our community coaches and innovators, just a fantastic all-around great guy, does a lot of great work with our Domo for Good program. And Karl, obviously a great guy as well because he works at Domo. So we'll talk about all the great things they have in store for you today. Karl, I'm going to turn it over to you. So again, I can get out of here and listen to all the goodness that you guys can provide our audience that's joining us today. Remember, use the comment section, use the chat section. Let us know where you are and ask questions so we can have some interaction. This session is meant to be interactive and engaging for those watching across YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn on all of our channels. We really appreciate you being here. Karl, take it away.
Thank you very much, Eddie, for that introduction, and a warm welcome to our audience here today, and of course to Jason, our guest speaker. Thank you very much for joining us. So we've been hearing a lot about AI. We recently had another AI Insight session. I hope that you found that informative as well. So what we wanted to take a look at in this session is some steps, some foundations that you can take within your organization to ensure that you're implementing AI safely and effectively. So just a quick, I guess, who am I? Like, my name is Karl Altern, Principal Program Manager for Data Governance at Domo. I've been at Domo now for about 6 years. Obviously, a lot of that time I've focused on data governance, but now with the advent of AI, there is also a fair amount of focus in my role on AI governance, and we'll be taking a look at some of that today. So I'm sure that most people on this call probably understand and have a good idea of what Domo is, but I would just like to quickly go through Domo for those of you in the audience who may not be as familiar with Domo. So Domo is a cloud-native data and analytics platform that's designed to make data accessible and actionable for everyone across the organization. It integrates and manages data, empowering your employees with user-friendly dashboards and apps. These tools connect to business workflows, facilitating real-time, informed decision-making and enhancing productivity. Domo ensures that data isn't just collected, but it's also a driving force in daily business operations, aiding in swift and informed actions. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Jason Altenberg. Jason, would you like to take it away?
Thanks, Karl. I always like to say that I put this slide in order of importance. So, of course, I got to start. Husband, father of 6 wonderful children. I had the privilege of working 10 years at Lazy Boy in warranty, and I ended up being in enterprise data. A huge part of that journey was due to Domo. About 8 years ago, that company had chosen to use Domo as its data experience platform, and very quickly was able to start turning business questions into value. A lot of dollars on the floor that we were able to pick up just by starting to look at our data a little bit more strategically. I was chosen to be a Domo Sensei, so sort of the Domo Cool Kids group before the Domo Community Coaches and Innovators, which I'm also now a part of. Highly recommend anybody that's watching and not part of the Domo community, go sign up and see what that's all about. Plenty of smart people on there answering questions all day long. I'm also a longtime member of the IIBA and DAMA International. That's the International Institute of Business Analysis and the Data Management Association. These two organizations, I really can't speak highly enough about them when it comes to analytics with IIBA, and also the data management and governance aspect of DAMA. Highly recommend those to anybody that's looking for any sort of birds of a feather type of organization in either of those two areas. We can move to the next one. Thank you. And so who are we? RXA at One Magnify. I'm proud to be with One Magnify. We're a group of incredibly talented and smart individuals working on challenging technological problems for a ton of great companies. We are a marketing technology company with underlying AI data and analytics foundation. Over here on the right, you can see some of our partnerships. We've done well over 400 plus Domo implementations at this point. We're excited about the future with these announcements around integrations with Snowflake that were announced recently at Domopalooza 2024. We work with these beloved and well-known brands, and all these folks from the Fortune 500 companies down to small businesses, they're all asking the same questions about AI right now. They're asking things like, how can we use Gen AI with our existing workflows and systems? How do we maintain data privacy when we're using these tools? What are these potential cybersecurity, regulatory, financial risks associated with Gen AI, and how can we protect against those? So when we're thinking about artificial intelligence or AI, it might seem like it's a buzzword or it's something that's new. We can move to the next slide here. Thank you. But that core concept, it's not entirely new. AI is about creating systems that make decisions that are based on data. Machine learning has been used since the 1950s, with algorithms being used to assess the creditworthiness of individuals. When you call into most 800 numbers or warranty places today, you'll get an IVR first. That's an interactive voice response. And those systems rely on speech recognition algorithms, which is another form of AI. Most of us are using Face ID to log into our phones. And this is also an algorithmic system that relies on computer vision. It's another form of AI. And generative AI is one of the most latest iterations of AI, which again is a system that's making decisions based on inputs and data to provide responses. Our Chief Analytics Officer, Jonathan Prantner, recently gave a talk, and he gave a really good metaphor, an example of it, as in something that we've all grown up with, a thermostat. And it's a simple form of what you might think of as AI or artificial intelligence that we encounter daily. We set our thermostat to a desired temperature, like 65 degrees. And when the thermometer reads 63, our furnace turns on. When it reaches 67, it turns off. Or maybe in these months, when it reaches 72, our air conditioner kicks on. The thermostat's role, though, is to make a decision. When do we turn that furnace off and on? When do we turn the AC on and off? And that decision is whether or not to heat or cool the house, and the data is that temperature that it senses. So our AI systems today are obviously much more complex, but they do work on the same type of fundamental principles, but they're far more complex and versatile. We're relying now, instead of on a simple temperature reading, on vast amounts of data. We're processing this data to make decisions, whether it's about recognizing a face in a photo, translating languages, or even up to self-driving cars. And the difference is that we're using an array of sensors and immense amounts of data to make these decisions. And in addition to this, we have hugely complicated and sophisticated algorithms that are able to learn and adapt to changing conditions. So AI has come a long way since that basic thermostat, and we've gone from simple rule-based systems to complex machine learning models that are capable of recognizing patterns, making decisions in complex and real-world scenarios. So today, AI can estimate the temperature of a room, even if there's no thermometer, just as it can recognize an object and image, translate a language, and recommend a product based on our preferences or the way that we're browsing the internet. So again, AI is not entirely new. It's the evolution of our decision-making systems based on data. It's about taking that thermostat concept to new heights. We're now making a decision in a wide range of applications, and it is changing the way that we interact with the world. And obviously, we want to be able to do this safely, effectively, and efficiently. All right, so here's the case for governance. Imagine it's pitch black out at night, and you're driving down a narrow gravel mountain road. It's pitch dark, it's foggy, it's hard to see beyond a few feet in front of you. The road is winding, and you know that there are huge cliffs on the side of your car. You could slide off the road at any moment. In these kind of conditions, you have to drive slowly and cautiously because you don't know what kind of dangers might be ahead. There could be a sharp turn, a sudden drop, a patch of ice, or even another oncoming car. Now, if we think about that, that's a terrifying situation to be in, not one that I would put anyone that I care about in. Now, let's transform that gravel path into a well-paved highway with clearly marked lanes, signs that indicate speed limits, upcoming turns. There are bright overhead lights, there are guardrails on the side, and there are warnings about icy patches that might be coming up. All these signs, these markers, these features, these are like governance frameworks inside of AI implementation. These things will guide you, they set boundaries, and they provide warnings about potential risks. So with these guidelines in place, you could drive faster, you can drive more confidently, you can move faster and move more confidently because you know what's ahead. Similarly, if you have a robust governance program with your AI implementation, it helps you move forward more efficiently and safely. It allows you to anticipate risks, it allows you to comply with regulations, and to adapt to changes smoothly. Just in the same way that you wouldn't want to be the one driving down that treacherous road without proper signs and lanes, you wouldn't want a company to implement AI without a strong governance framework. It's essential for navigating these complexities of this technology, both safely and effectively.
I really like this analogy. It certainly appeals to me because I think that a lot of people would probably consider governance to be a bit of a hindrance, sort of thing that perhaps might slow down the implementation of AI within an organization, or perhaps even just data adoption, right? If we're talking about data governance. But from what it sounds like to me is what you're saying here is that really effective governance is a way that you can enable your organization to adopt this technology much more quickly, perhaps, than your competitors, because by doing it in a safe way, you're going to be proactively preventing any of these sort of risks arising with the adoption of generative AI. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the idea of, move fast, break things, maybe that would work if you're driving a car through the desert or, on the salt flats out in Utah. But if you're driving through a residential neighborhood, the motto of move fast and break things maybe isn't the wisest advice. So given the setting where you're at, you'd want to make sure that you are taking into account that there are real risks that are associated with these projects, and that it does seem, like you mentioned, like governance is almost a dirty word sometimes. Oh no, we have to make rules, we have to make regulations, we have to make conscious efforts about the way in which we implement these things. But just in the same way that I outlined in the analogy, these things can be the way that you are able to move fast versus a barrier, which I see a lot of folks sort of misinterpreting the idea of governance as being this barrier, versus, again, lane markers, road signs, being able to see what's ahead of you and know how you are supposed to react to those conditions. Those are features of a well-designed and robust governance program. And I don't think that anybody, maybe a stop sign might be considered a little bit of a barrier. But again, stop signs are put in place for reasons so that we don't collide with oncoming cars, or hit people on the road, and that we're making sure that we're driving in a safe and efficient manner, given the areas in which we are trying to commute through.
Yeah, that's a good point. And these risks, they're real. These risks, it seems like not a week goes by that some risk of generative AI is realized and becomes an issue. Like just 2 weeks ago, the issue with Google's new the search, the
Gemini.
Yeah, how it would just give bogus responses that it picked up from various places on the internet, like putting glue into your pizza cheese to make it stay on the crust.
I mean, it does say it's non-toxic on the bottle, but I'm not sure that it's going to be the most effective way to enjoy a good pizza.
look, mate, if I'm eating pizza at your place, I do not want to find out that there's been glue in the cheese just to make it stick to the base a little bit better.
The Elmer's glue in my dining room is for the kids to do crafts with, I promise. I'm not taking that sort of advice to heart.
Good to hear that. So with that then in mind, I think it's important that we can sort of look into what steps organizations can take to prevent these risks from occurring. What they can do to the road to make sure that road is a safe road to drive down. And these are sort of 3 steps that we've sort of worked with Jason to put together. And I guess you're sort of looking at this and you're probably saying, well, this doesn't really look like anything new. And the reality is that it isn't new, right? A lot of what we're going to be sharing with you today around AI governance has been built on the foundation of decades of data governance. And it's just been brought into, I guess, the new age of AI. So we're breaking it down really into 3, I guess, distinct phases or steps for your AI governance. At first, policy. Any good governance will always have at its core and always start with the policy. And the policy is the definitions for your organization's generative AI policy. Next up will be clarity. How you can look to share this policy with your employees and train them to understand not just what it is, but also why it exists. And then lastly, safety. We talked about guardrails before. Guardrails are important on the road, but they are also just as important in your organization. Guardrails give your employees a safe place where they can experiment and test AI without having to worry about these risks that we're always sort of talking about, perhaps the risk of going off the road or the risk of going a little bit too fast and perhaps causing some issues with your adoption of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just to touch on that policy point, I think we've all had the experience of sort of, or maybe you haven't, but if you have, put it in the chat where you read through a policy and you said, oh, that sentence, that was written for somebody because of something that happened. And I think that that's a good way to make sure that we're ensuring that, if we see something that has been done with any tool or even with a generative AI tool, that we're documenting, ensuring that, it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely right. Like with these generative AI tools, they are in many ways a bit of a minefield. I think that we're seeing a lot of new tools being developed that haven't perhaps properly been thought about. So here on point 2, for example, we have this list of sort of recommendations for you to put in your policy, but we recommend that you make it very clear to your users which generative AI tools have been approved for use, and I guess also most importantly, which tools have been rejected for use. I mean, Jason, do you have any thoughts on these AI note takers that we often see being invited to meetings? It's not unusual now, actually, for me to join a Zoom and not to see something perhaps from Fireflies or perhaps a Gong note taker or even a Zoom note taker.
Yeah, so those are actually really great examples because of the regulatory environment around them. There are certain states where they have laws around what it requires to consent to being recorded, either single or two-party consent when it comes to having a recording of a conversation live between 2 people. If your organization doesn't have a policy around those and you were to go into a situation where you required that second party consent, you could be exposing yourself to real financial or legal risk around even storing that recording on your server between you and somebody from another state that doesn't allow such a recording to exist.
Yeah, exactly. And even if even if they perhaps do consent to the recording, there's no guarantee that the way that the AI will interpret that recording is correct. I've certainly seen situations where the AI. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with these tools, what happens is that you have your Zoom meeting, for example, and then someone will add an AI note taker. That note taker will join the meeting, and then it'll record the call. It'll transcribe that call and then summarize it afterwards. But for those of you who've been using AI, especially like ChatGPT, you'll be aware that sometimes you just get bogus answers, or it just doesn't like interpret your question properly. That can sometimes happen with these transcripts, and then it'll give you the wrong, it'll sort of interpret something incorrectly, and then maybe it'll email it out to everyone as well. I've seen that with some of these as well. So you don't want to have a situation where it's emailing out incorrect interpretations of your calls to everyone who's attended. That can certainly cause problems. Down point number three, we have the why do we have a generative AI policy? And this is something that we've seen a lot with data governance and adoption, specifically around like driving adoption for data and analytics. Is that if you explain to your users why these policies exist, then they're going to be more inclined to follow them, rather than just giving blanket statements, blanket rules. If there's that understanding of why it exists, then yeah, generally we see that reception is a little bit better. And with that in mind, this is a slide that we've put together that explains why these generative AI policies exist. And so let's just sort of talk you through the example of what's happening in this slide and sort of why it's important. So when you as a user, for example, at home, you're using ChatGPT and you enter your prompt into ChatGPT, that prompt is sent to the OpenAI servers, and then it goes into their large language model. The response then comes out of the model, goes back through their provider servers, and then the response appears on your screen. Now, the question sort of that arises from this particular example is, what happens to the data at the provider servers? And it's an interesting question, especially when it comes to data privacy and data security. I mean, Jason, do you have any thoughts around what's happening with our data at the provider servers? Any thoughts on what they might be doing with the data from our prompts and our responses?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a millennial, I think one of the not written down rules, but one that's understood, is anything that goes on the internet is there forever, right? So in that kind of same token, I've also heard data is the new oil, or data is your gold, from Josh at Domapalooza. So if I were to walk up to your house and drop some gold on your front porch, do you think that you'd be returning it in a hurry? Or do you think that if I said, here, this is for you, analyze it and let me know what you think, and I never asked for it back, would you keep it? And I think that what's happening here is that we're providing a lot of companies with vast amounts of data that they can link back to us in the same way that a big provider, an ad provider like Google, can figure out what kind of services or purchases I might be interested in, and then advertise those things to me. A company like OpenAI, who's receiving all of the questions that a person might possibly ask a large language model that they might interpret as, this sort of generative AI oracle or this virtual assistant, however this person's approaching it. The fact is they have to put a prompt. They have to have that input in that upper left. They're providing some data to that server. And if that data is valuable, of course, they're going to maintain that data, use it, and analyze that data in order to be able to either monetize it later or to use it for their own marketing purposes or refining their own tools.
Yeah, exactly right. And admittedly, OpenAI have said that that's what they do with the data. They use the data to train their models. But there are other providers out there. There are other AI tools out there that may not be so transparent with their data policies. And it takes a user to really go in and look at their policy, email them perhaps to find out what exactly they're doing. I mean, using the data to train the generative AI, that is a bit of an issue, because we have certainly seen situations where those responses then appear, the data that's gone in appears in responses given to other users, but they could just outright sell your data. I mean, it costs a lot of money to run AI, so, I'm sure these companies are doing whatever they can to sort of generate some income, especially given that like ChatGPT is free. I would just add one last thing here, though, which is that OpenAI does have an enterprise agreement. For example, like with Domo, we have an agreement with them, and part of that agreement is that any data that we send in is sort of removed after a certain amount of days, and they don't use it for any sort of business purposes. So this is really a risk for when your employees perhaps might be going home and using ChatGPT or using ChatGPT from, I don't know, maybe their mobile phone or something. And in those sort of situations, they do not have the protections or the guardrails that we have when we're using OpenAI through the enterprise agreement. So on to the next pillar, or the next point, which is sharing the policy, sharing your generative AI policy. It goes without saying, I suppose, that the best written policy is useless if you haven't shared it with your employees and trained them in how to use it. Ideally speaking, these policy documents should be somewhere that it is very easy for your employees to gain access to. For example, in Domo, we have several places that we can store these. Most notably, we can just put them in Domo itself. And for Domo customers, that might be an option that you want to explore as well. Another point to consider here is using an all-hands meeting to share your AI policy. That's typically what we'll also do here at Domo. Is we'll take a small portion of each department's all-hand meetings, maybe 5 minutes to talk about the policy and share any updates. Jason, do you have any thoughts rather on how RxA1 Magnify shares policies out there?
Yeah, certainly. So I think this is kind of an interesting use case. I actually encountered a situation a couple weeks ago that I thought was incredibly interesting. I wanted to share it. As part of my onboarding process at this company and at a few other ones, I've had to have the experience of going through a virtual online training where it says things like, oh, don't click on suspicious links in your emails. And if your CEO tells you to go and buy a bunch of Google Play gift cards, don't do that. And so to me, it seems like, I'm just going to, see this and click it. And of course, I'm not going to do that. Of course, I'm not going to do that. But I think one thing to remember about that is that if you already know that the policy being written and communicated, maybe it's not for you, but maybe it is for somebody else. I had somebody fall victim to one of these scams, and I felt for them because the way that they explained it to me, everything kind of aligned to where they would say, of course I would do this for you. Of course I would go out and help you and take care of this errand for you. You're my boss, and I'm going to go get these gift cards. And actually, the scammer fell flat at the point at which they told them to scratch off the codes and send them a picture, because they were like, no, they're on your desk. I'm not going to do that. So luckily, at the last moment, they got saved by it. But there are reasons that we communicate these things, and there are reasons that we sometimes have to continuously reinforce these rules, right? Even if you think about these kind of simple things like, don't stand on the grass over here, or after sometimes they apply like a chemical treatment, keep your dogs and your kids off this grass for a little while. They'll put those little signs up or things like that. I think it's important that we find mechanisms to communicate the policy clearly to the employees and do it on a regular basis so that there's really not that opportunity to say, well, I didn't know, right? Because if we communicate it often enough, if there's just that, if we gotten to that point where it's a tacit understanding, then that's where we've succeeded.
Yeah, completely agree. Right? You just, as Ben Shine says, it's like you just have to find as many ways to communicate these out to people as possible, and you just have to keep on communicating it, just to ensure that everyone understands it and is properly listening and follows along. And with generative AI, right? The risks we've already talked about. Those risks are real. The risks are severe. And if these risks sort of come to become issues, then it can potentially cost your company quite a lot of money. So we need to do whatever we can to avoid that from occurring. So on clarity, I think it's also good for us to talk about AI literacy, and before we talk about AI literacy, we should talk about the foundation of data literacy as well. Data literacy is probably a term that a lot of us are familiar with, the ability to read, work with, the ability to interpret data, And I think probably the most important part about data literacy is that critical thinking that comes along with it, right? When we are looking at some sort of visualization, perhaps in Domo, is this visualization a true and accurate representation of the data that it was built on? Does it represent reality? And if not, then what can we do to sort of change it and improve it? Right? These are the sort of things that we often teach Domo customers. But that sort of data literacy is the foundation then for AI literacy. And it's really, I think that critical thinking aspect of data literacy is really important for AI literacy. It's important because we need to be critical about analyzing the responses that the model is giving us to ensure that it's correct, right? To ensure that it hasn't hallucinated some sort of incorrect response. And so when it comes to the clarity of communicating your policy to your employees, it's pretty critical that AI literacy is a part of that policy and how you educate and train your employees on AI literacy. Now, we do have some examples here. The first of which is webinars and workshops. Webinars and workshops, they're a great place to start. They can be very high level, a great way to explain to especially non-technical employees about what generative AI is, how it works, what its risks are. These are really an opportunity for you to enhance the understanding and basic skills of your employees with generative AI. The next step could be AI coding workshops. These are a level of complexity higher than workshops, the initial workshops rather, but they really give your employees an opportunity to perhaps work alongside or code alongside someone a little bit more technical, someone who has used AI, and they can get a better understanding of AI applications and tool usage. You can sort of think of these AI coding workshops as where the rubber hits the road of AI, an opportunity for your employees to really to give AI a much better shot. As part of all this, certification programs help. They give your employees opportunities to show off what they've learned by giving them formal recognition of their AI competencies. And in many ways, I guess it's a bit like gamification, right? By giving your employees these certifications when they've achieved different levels in their AI learnings, then it'll help motivate them to keep on learning and improving their AI skills. And then my favorite, which is these competitions and hackathons. So we hold a lot of hackathons at Domo. We've got another one, I think, coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I mean, hackathons are great, right? They're an opportunity for employees to come together in groups, to work and solve problems in new and innovative ways. And we held an AI hackathon, I think late last year, with a specific focus on bringing in business users, because typically a hackathon is targeted at technical people, but we wanted to bring in non-technical people from sales organization or from HR or from like other parts of the organization to come in with their interesting business problems, so that we could code AI solutions for them. And look, it was a fantastic opportunity for us to bring together people who wouldn't normally work together. And coming out of it, we had some great solutions built up. Two of the solutions have sort of gone on to be productionized and really become the foundations of solutions that we then have provided our customers in Domo. And it's important for me to say that all of these solutions were built in Domo as well. And just as we build them with Domo, our customers can also build them in Domo. Jason, any thoughts on these? Have you guys run any AI hackathons or like coding workshops?
None that I'm aware of, but I do think this is a great idea. And as you were talking about the idea of competitions and hackathons and bringing in those business users, I think all of these types of things here, there is an ability for every one of these to be attended by business users, by folks that might not necessarily be the ones to sign up for those hackathons. And I would think if you're hosting an internal hackathon within a company, I would strongly recommend that you would bring in, at least during the presentation portion, when these solutions are being presented after all the work is done, bring in the rest of the company as much as you can in order to be able to be receptive to that, and then to try to provide feedback on those solutions. You kind of pointed out, right? I always think of it in this way, right? Who are you going to get your survey responses from? People that like to take surveys, of course. So if you want to get the opinions of other folks that might have some skin in the game, but maybe they didn't want to sign up for the hackathon, at least during that presentation layer, allow for maybe do your presentation during a company all hands or during a departmental one, so that you can get some more outside opinions on those solutions that are being presented, as they might be able to poke some holes in that might not have been seen by those technical teams.
Yeah, and it's a good point as well, because I guess it's more than just also like perhaps looking at the solutions that are being built and poking holes in them, but also I feel like there's an element here of these like aha moments, where if you might get someone from the business who wasn't partaking in the hackathon, they might come in and say, "Wow, okay, I didn't realize that you could do that with generative AI. I have this problem that my department is working on. Maybe I can use generative AI to solve that as well."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think around data and Domo, one of the reasons I think that I've been so successful with it is just keeping in mind that you can get yourself locked into sort of this navel gazing aspect, where it's like, oh, we're so great because we develop all these reports and all these solutions, and look how wonderfully technical and awesome our data stack is. When at the end of the day, if you're not delivering business value with it, does it really matter that you're using the highest tier warehouse of compute for Snowflake if your business isn't getting any value out of the report that you're building at the end of it? If your business users aren't on board with the idea, if you can't promote adoption, if you can't get it out there and have people understand what the thing is, why we're using it, and how they can use it, then really is it providing a lot of value? And I think that Domo does a really great job of democratizing a lot of that, to where you can have that participative process where you're building cards and dashboards with folks that are right there in the room. And I'm really excited about the Domo AI services layer, because it does allow some transparency into seeing how are these responses generated, what different models can we swap out to see if there might be a better tune and fit for this task. And it allows people that might not necessarily know on the back end how these responses differ from API to API to be able to do that. But in a click select type of interface, I can go from getting my response from GPT-4 to GPT 3.5. And all I need to know as a business user is, well, GPT 3.5 is a little bit cheaper for this application. Maybe if the answers are just as good, we can swap that out versus some of these other frontier models that might be really, really great at answering complex questions. If we're trying to answer a simple question, we want to do that cost-benefit analysis on it, and Domo allows for that kind of quick, iterative switching out of these applications really easily. Or these APIs, I should say. Sorry. Services.
Agreed. Good point. And I guess onto more of what Domo is doing in this space. We have some tools that we can show you now, and this is the first tool I wanted to talk about, which is the Responsible GPT app that we released at Domopalooza. So if we sort of think back to what we were talking about, like the security and privacy of your data with ChatGPT, this is a tool that we've created to resolve that problem. So this interacts currently interacts with OpenAI using our enterprise agreement, but in the near future, it will use Domo GPT to keep your data nicely secure and private, to make sure that your prompts and responses aren't being leaked, aren't being sold, and aren't being used to train the model. And so this is available now to use. You can access it through the App Store. Are you seeing a lot of use for these sort of tools in the market, Jason? Is there interest in companies to provide their employees with their own safe version of ChatGPT?
Yeah, absolutely. To that point earlier about we don't want folks to go out and sort of go rogue and be siphoning all of our company's valuable data and secrets into an interface that we really haven't blessed as a company. I think that having something like the responsible GPT available through Domo provides a safe alternative. And I think that there are a lot of concerns around some of the incidents that we've seen. I believe, wasn't it, I believe like Samsung or somebody else out there had their data leaked through a response, and it was quickly realized that their data was used to train the solution. And what I'm seeing, though, is that there are a lot of folks that are curious about how we can use tools like these to empower knowledge workers to be able to do their jobs more quickly and efficiently. Particularly call centers is one area that I can think of right off the top of my head where I've seen a lot of interest. As your call center employees might not have the access to the knowledge of the entire organization for many, many years for a product that you've put out there and have been supporting for many years. But you can take documentation and use things like RAG to pull the data out of those documents and then deliver that to these folks and make it a less cumbersome experience than trying to say like, trawl through a large directory full of Excel files, PDFs, Word documents. Having an interface like this makes that make a lot of sense. Particularly also working with folks that might be working with data that is sensitive to their business, and they also want to be able to get information about public data. We've also developed solutions where we are using some smaller models that are hosted on private clouds, much in the same way that you're talking about this agreement, where this data isn't leaked anywhere. If we can host and run these models on a private cloud, then we can use maybe smaller models to answer questions about personal identification, PII data, like a customer and where they live. And we can use and develop tools on a private cloud that would interface with models in that private cloud to answer those questions, and then also use that same set of tooling to go out to public clouds and get public data and interface with some of these frontier models as well. So I've seen a ton of interest in this sort of chatbot interface, and I've seen a couple of implementations that we've done of it that have been really great. We're actually going to be releasing some more content around that in the upcoming months. So if you wanted to take a look at our at One Magnify's LinkedIn page, we'll be doing some presentations over those in the next couple months.
Thank you very much for that, Jason. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm curious to see what you guys are producing in this space. And of course, speaking of PII, I mean, PII is a challenge that many of our customers face, and I'm really excited to also see what the Domo universal models can do in this space. We'll have a PII universal model that you'll be able to use to identify PII data in your instances. So I'd be remiss as well if I didn't at least talk about some of the Domo AI new tools which will be coming out in the near future, or maybe available now for some of our customers. So this is the capability to ask and answer questions of your data. We do have this available now, and everything that Jason mentioned about transparency of data in terms of how it shows you. It'll show you essentially how it came to produce its answer. It'll show you which cards or which data sets it looked at, the query that it used. I think that when it comes to this transparency around generative AI, it's absolutely critical for us to ensure that you guys know what's happening, and so that you're rest assured that what's happening is nice and safe. So with that, Jason, I pass it across to you. Do you want to have a little bit of a chat about RxA One Magnify and what you guys have been doing?
Sure, yeah. So in addition to what I was mentioning there, sorry, I feel like I jumped ahead a slide. We do offer these sort of chatbot assistants that we've created for many of our clients. We're actively innovating in that space. In addition, when we're thinking about effectively and safely implementing AI solutions, there are many stages of that journey. Whether you're just beginning that journey or maybe you've got oceans of data and you're ready to build on them, we offer AI readiness assessments. And so that is a service that we provide if you'd like somebody to come in and just as a consultative basis, understand your environment and get an idea of, are we ready for this sort of an implementation, or what would it take to get us there over the next couple weeks, months, or years? how long do those things take? We do have experience in all of those fields. In addition to, as I said, we've set up these sort of chatbot type assistants for our clients. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit our website at onemagnify.com, or feel free to reach out directly to me via LinkedIn or through the Domo community forums.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Jason. I think we have time for some questions. Ready?
Awesome session, guys. Yeah, love to see the interaction. We had tons of folks, obviously, joining us from all across our social platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, as well as just some interesting comments here that you may not have noticed during the session. And this is the time. If you have questions, you want to comment, please put those on your platform of choice, and we'll get to them for a Q&A. Is this true, Jason, that each of your children has a nickname based off of a Domo ETL tile? Is this true?
Well, little group might argue, but no, absolutely not. No, I do have my kids are not named after any sort of Domo ETL tiles. Mostly it was family names or decisions between me and their mother.
We'd like to squash that rumor right now. John Lee, you are a bad man for bringing that up in the chat. That's what we'll say. No comments have come up or questions have come up at this point in time. Jason, Karl, obviously Jason had mentioned community, great place, obviously near and dear to my heart. Our community forum is a great place to get some interaction with some folks here at Domo and some expertise into some of your daily usage of Domo. So we'd love to see you there. RXA at One Magnify, tons and tons of resources and solutions obviously provided by them. So make sure you check them out as well. Karl, where can we find you? I know you're not as active in the forum as you probably would like to be, but can people reach out to you if they have additional questions about this session?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. You can speak to your account team and they'll be able to put you in contact with me. Maybe I perhaps should browse the community forums a little bit more, and perhaps I will.
No pressure on the call, right? No pressure on the call. We got a huge thank you here from Alexander joining us on YouTube. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Karl. I'm not sure if this is a suggestion for a future kid's name, but Mr. Beast Mode may be there as well. Mike and on our team, thanks for joining. Everyone, again, we are doing these AI Insight series sessions. This was part 2. Part 3 will be in a few weeks. If you don't know where to find those, I'd love to just give you a direct link, but it's better if I tell you to go to the community forums, Domo, or community-forums.domo.com. We'll get you right into all of the fun stuff that we have in store for you today. In fact, I saw Anna Yardley here earlier, letting people know it's a great place where you can find all of the fun stuff. Again, community-forums.domo.com /main will get you to the main page, but then click on events and you'll see all of the upcoming schedule for our AI Insight series. We appreciate everyone for joining us. Thanks again, and we will catch you on the next AI live stream. Thanks, Karl, and thank you, Jason, for joining us today.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for having me.